Yay!
Yay! So we are all gathered here today to celebrate the union. I'm just kidding. No, we're gathered here today because me, by way of my site, unruly.com, un-ruly.com, put on a public art exhibit, an interactive public art exhibit, about 2 weeks ago. Um, we had our reasons for doing it. Those reasons were, one, we wanted to make a statement, and two, we wanted to start a conversation. So we are all gathered here today to celebrate the union. I'm just kidding. We're gathered here today because we, by way of
Can you all
my
hear?
site, unruly.
I can
Yeah.
kind of
We're
hear.
hearing what you recorded.
.com.
I don't know why this is
put
happening.
on a public art exhibit, an
Okay.
about 2 weeks ago. Whoops. Sorry about that. Like, this is my first time using this, so there's going to be hiccups. Okay, so we had our reasons for doing this. The first reason one was we wanted to make a statement of soliciting someone or not soliciting someone to touch their hair. And we also wanted to start a conversation. A conversation was indeed started. And a lot of people had very strong reactions to the exhibit. And I think that what happened at the exhibit, whether or not you were for it or against it, I think something, in my opinion, something special happened. So we're all here to kind of talk about the exhibit, but also to talk about the larger picture, talk about the larger issues at hand. And you guys all have opinions about it, opinions that you wanted to share. So again, here's another forum to share your opinions about this particular subject. So all that said, we'll start off by introducing who's here. So first, me. My name is Antonia. I'm the founder of Unruly. And then the next person we have as part of this discussion is Miss Rada Blank. Rada, feel free to give a little bit of background about yourself.
Sure. I'm a playwright, former stand-up comic, former educator of almost 20 years in the Harlem community, and it's my pleasure to be here.
Great. We're glad to have you. Following Rada is Rachel. Rachel, feel free to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm actually in Maryland right now. I was visiting my brother in New York when I found out about the exhibit. I have my master's degree in women's studies, and I am a co-founder of Feminist Friends, which is an organization that's just in its first year. So thank you all for allowing me to discuss with you today.
No problem. The next person I see in the Google panel is Miss Jen. Jen, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm just a full-time student from Rockland, California, and I came across the exhibit a couple days ago, and I just fell in love with it. I think it's an awesome thing. And thank you for inviting me to be here.
Thank you for being here. Next up, we have Miss Cleopatra. Feel free to tell us about yourself.
Hi, I'm Cleopatra from Bronx, New York. Born and raised. And I found out about the exhibit through what is it? It was one of those like AM New York. I saw the ad and I clicked it out and I posted it up on Facebook and I shoved it in everyone's face I could like find because I thought it was crazy what you guys were doing, but I was like so interested in it. And I am also a core member at the Audre Lorde Project.
Well, thank you for being here, Jerry. I'm sorry, I keep seeing Jerry pop in and pop out. Next up, we have Autumn, who is one of our You Can Touch My Hair models. Autumn, feel free to tell us about yourself.
Hi guys, my name is Autumn and I am from New York. I am a YouTube natural hair vlogger, Beautifully Marked on YouTube. I'm a makeup artist and a singer. I was very, very happy to be a part of the event, and I can't wait to just start this discussion.
Last but not least, so Jerry keeps popping in and popping out. I'm trying to eject her. But last but not least, we have my sister Abby, who is my partner in crime with Unruly. She is helping me publicize or get the word out about Unruly, as well as just kind of management of the day-to-day. So Abby, if you're there, feel free to tell us about yourself.
Sure. So I am a publicist by trade. I work in PR. So I handle all the publicity and PR for Unruly.com, but I also have my own clients. I mostly work in entertainment and lifestyle PR. But also I do handle some of the managing editor duties for Unruly as well. So I kind of do a lot of different things for Unruly.
Cool. So now that we know who everyone is, we can get started on the actual discussion. So I guess the first thing to talk about, so the exhibit happened, but as I mentioned before, there are probably larger issues or just larger issues at hand. The first one is just the phenomenon of people touching black hair. For me, it was where the whole exhibit kind of stemmed from. I myself had the experience of people coming up to me and asking to touch my hair, particularly when it's like this, or sometimes I might have like a big blonde curly whatever. And so I knew that my experience wasn't unique to me. I knew other people experienced it. So I wrote about that experience, and then I wanted to follow up that experience with the exhibit. But I'd like to get some of your thoughts on the phenomenon, let's call it that, of people touching our hair or wanting to or being curious about it. And maybe we can start with you, Miss Rada.
Oh, first, if I can just say something that might be a little controversial about my hair. This is my hair. It doesn't grow out of my head, but I have the receipt from 125th Street. My hair. Wondering, this is my hair. I bought it, so I own it. I think this is such an important conversation to have now because there's been this boom in the natural hair industry. Where just more and more women each day from the Black community are deciding to go natural, as they say. And so I think that the industry, the beauty care industry, is paying attention to what we're saying now. And one of the bigger issues that we've been dealing with is this fascination with our hair, right? And I think that it speaks to the spirit of otherness, like there's a fascination with something that you don't possess or own yourself, and there's a curiosity about it. And I don't think that, I mean, I don't know that it's a phenomenon because I think that this has just been happening since, since some of our ancestors arrived on these shores, Right. So it's something that is important to me as a woman of color, African American, Black, whatever you want to call me this week. And I'm really curious as to how this dialogue can inform, this next generation of young girls who are contemplating should they wear their hair natural or not, and then also contemplating the idea of boundaries, like what is safe and what is cool, in terms of people approaching you about touching your hair. So I'm really happy to be a part of this conversation, and it was why I came the second day, because I saw some images online and I had a completely visceral reaction to them. So yeah.
So I guess, and feel free, anyone else on the call or in the chat to chime in here. But I'm curious, where you guys each draw the line in terms of what's acceptable and what's not acceptable when it comes to your personal boundaries. Are you more open to someone asking you about your hair? Do you allow a stranger to ask you about your hair? And if so, under what circumstances? Okay.
I would say that a lot of people thought that because I was holding up a sign saying you can touch my hair, that's how I live my everyday life. It's not. I pick and choose who I want to touch my hair. If someone comes up to me and they're really interested and I can see that they want to know, of course I'm going to let them know. I might not be in the mood for them to touch my hair that day, but catch me tomorrow. I might have a good day. You might touch it. So just because we were giving consent that day, it didn't mean that it was acceptable every single day for someone to come up to us and just touch our hair, especially without our permission.
Okay.
I agree. I think for me, it's totally unacceptable for a stranger to come up to me and just start touching my hair, because my hair is a part of me. It's on my head. And so for them to touch me in general without even letting me know or anything like that, I think that's unacceptable. But like with family and friends, that's kind of almost expected. And, you know, it's, I don't know, but even if a stranger asks me, can I, you know, touch your hair? Depending on, you know, how they asked or what they look like, maybe, I don't know, I would say, well, sure, because you asked, and now I'm expecting it. But if you just come up to me and start tugging on my hair, I'm probably not going to be too happy afterwards.
So actually, it's interesting what you said, depending on who they are, how they look, and I think generally, for me, you can usually tell when someone is approaching you and that person has like a genuine curiosity and is coming from that place. And you can also tell when they're not. Like typically the people that have been drunk and have been, you know, kind of like made a spectacle of me or made a spectacle of themselves and us, like, you know that they're not coming from a good place. You know that it's more about their own amusement. But a curious thing though that I've just been seeing, because a lot more people now have been telling me about their experiences. But it seems that when it comes to other Black women asking about their hair, even if that person is a stranger, that's more acceptable when it's someone outside of your race. Do any of you guys agree or disagree with that?
I personally disagree with it. I'm from New York. I don't know when it was acceptable to touch anybody else in New York if you didn't want to get stabbed.
Okay.
That's like a general thing that everybody should know about already. Like, if you're from New York, don't touch anybody else. But then I get these really cool requests, and I only have had natural hair like 2.5 years ago, and it started just being like, people would love to like touch my hair. I know it's all wrapped up now because I'm hiding it from like really bad weather, but it's just, even it doesn't really matter. I know like, some people, they do use it as an excuse. Well, I'm a Black woman. Am I able to touch your hair? No. Why is it any better? I don't want to be digging into anyone else's hair. I like to respect everyone else's space, and I would just assume the best from everyone else. So it's really confusing to me why that is kind of like a pass. Like, they think that's a pass for some people. That, oh, you're a person of color, I'm a person of color. And it's usually, I even get it sometimes, and it's, I don't know why it's more upsetting. I get it a lot from women who have relaxed hair or they have weaves. And I don't really, I get it more from women who have like relaxed hair or weaves rather than people who have natural hair. And I just like, I guess since they haven't gone through my journey yet, they don't know that it's offensive to me. So that's my personal.
So I just want to make sure that I heard you correctly, because you're coming a little bit in and out. So you said that regardless of race, like whether that person's white or Black, it's not okay for anyone to come and touch your hair. And I think I also heard that you get a lot of inquiries about your hair from Black women, from women who have relaxed hair, as opposed to natural hair, and they probably are inquisitive about your experience with natural hair. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Although yesterday it's really, really funny, because yesterday I made an exception to a young woman I met at an event who I guess she had just chopped off her hair, and she asked me, "Hey, can I touch your hair?" And I went into this whole like thing. I was like, "Oh, go to this website, Unruly, and there's like women who are letting them touch their hair. It's crazy." And then I ended up letting her touch my hair because I got so into it with her. I kind of like bonded with her over it. So I kind of like let my guard down a little bit. So I let her touch my hair, but that's about it.
And how did you feel afterwards?
I felt a lot better because she was like wondering how I got it to be so soft and why like mine didn't clump up so easily, and told like she was just starting up, so it made me feel a lot better to like have shown someone like, oh, you can get your hair like this. I'm not saying my hair is like the poo, but you know, it's good to like help someone along their journey. So I was like, I can be her little like, you know, guide for the day and leave it at that.
Cool, awesome. But one thing also that I saw come up just a little bit in some of the stories that I heard was that a couple times women have been asked by children if they can touch their hair, and that seems to be sort of the universal situation where it's okay because, like, you know, a child is coming from, you know, a good place of like pure curiosity. And I see you shaking your head, Roddy. You disagree?
I've worked with children, and I've had my hair pulled by kids.
Yes.
When I see a child reaching for my hair, I kind of back off. I agree as a former educator that, you know, there's an innocence and a curiosity there that many children have. So, okay, you might indulge them for that moment, but I do think that where this idea of someone having this fascination with something unlike themselves or something that may appear exotic to them, you know. My thing is this: do you have any friends with hair other than yours? Yeah. Can't you just ask your friend?
Right.
You know, so the reason the event, I mean, I'd love to talk about the event at some point, but one of the things it was very telling to me, for the people who were so fascinated with the kinky hair, they must not have anyone in their circle of friends or their community who has kinky, you know, not relaxed or natural hair or afro hair. I'm like, the fact that you have to come to an exhibit to learn what black hair feels like, you don't have one black friend in your community that you can ask. So I thought that was very telling where the exhibit was concerned. But I guess the reason I came to the exhibit myself was, again, I saw some images online of some of the models being touched by some of the models' hair being touched by some curious onlookers, and it just felt a little too jubilant for me. And the images themselves felt like a spectacle, and I think I was really concerned about the fact that, you know, those images are going to be disseminated into, you know, the internet universe, so to speak, and I just was concerned about, you know, the fact that black women, I can't speak for all black women, but what I can speak to is what I've witnessed. And we've also often been clumped into this monolithic voice, you know, that what one black person says is the expression of all. Right. And those signs of, you can touch my hair, I was nervous about the message or the signal that was sending out, that maybe some very curious person saw that as a sign to go touch somebody's head and then end up flat on the pavement. So I had a very strong and visceral reaction, and that's why myself and my friend Stacey Sargent and Nicole Moore of thehotness.com inserted ourselves into the conversation. I don't think, you know, people calling us protesters. I wasn't protesting. I've been to a protest. That wasn't protesting. I think what we were doing was just inserting another voice into the fabric of conversation, so that when the images get disseminated, there's just some other a larger context around the subject and the conversation.
Yeah.
So I'm not a protester. I think that your intention was strong and important, and it's why we're here today. You know, so I don't protest that. I think we were just kind of inserting different voices into this idea about hair and whether or not you can touch it.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that I really actually appreciated about day two, and this whole exhibit just on a whole was the fact that you could, like, literally, if you were standing, or like if you had a bird's eye view of the exhibit and you saw, on one side, women saying, no, you can't touch my hair, not those exact words, and then on the other side saying, you can touch my hair. I think looking at that just holistically kind of shows the just how exactly the response can vary. Because just as we can't speak for the whole community, neither can the other side, because it does vary from person to person, and it even varies from moment to moment. So I appreciated having that other layer in the conversation.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
I've been reading on your site that you said that you were surprised by the reaction, like the people who showed up to offer the other signs, which I know one sign was you can't touch my hair, but you could kiss my
yeah.
So and I read that you had said that you were surprised about the reaction. I just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about
yeah, totally. So I guess so maybe let me change my words slightly. So I didn't anticipate the reaction. It didn't surprise me, because I do understand where it came from. I do know that racism is something that's present today, whether or not we all want to admit it. I know there's some people that just want to think that it doesn't exist anymore, but it does. And it is, and today it exists in its most dangerous form because it's not as visible as shackles or whips or cotton picking or segregation. It's marginalization. So I understand how it exists today, and I understand that we have to protect ourselves from it because no one else will. So I get the root of the response. I also get what you're saying. And the one thing I would admittedly change about the exhibit is to put that disclosure on the sign saying that this does not apply to all women, and this and you shouldn't do this to a stranger, because what you said is absolutely right. And especially since these images are getting disseminated through social media, for people who aren't reading the articles, aren't getting the larger context, and are only seeing the image, it is a little bit dangerous to just have that blank statement there with no disclosure. So I completely hear you, and I completely get that. And if I were to do it again, by all means, there would be that sort of blatant, this is a one-time thing, this is limited to this particular experience, and this is limited to this particular person at this moment. But in terms of the surprise, I guess this might be a little bit of a naivety in me, but I think, because I guess I just felt that we were all part of the same team and we were all saying the same thing, and I felt that because
we're not saying the same thing.
I'm sorry?
But we weren't saying the same thing.
Yes, we were. We were.
Your sign said, you can touch my hair. My sign said, touch my hair with your hand, and I'm going to touch your face with my fist.
All right.
Those were the images that were being disseminated. So while your intention and my intention was the same, I think, we weren't saying the same thing.
Right.
And that is what I think the crux comes down to, is what was actually being communicated and to whom were we talking to? Right. I feel like there were so many, just to be completely honest, there were so many mixed messages. There were friends who came and engaged me, and then people I didn't know who engaged me and also engaged some of the models. And I think when asked about what the intention was, the word education came up a lot. And then people said, well, I think it's all about language and entry points. Right. And, what kind of reaction would it have been? What kind of reaction would have happened if it wasn't, you can touch my hair, but a question? Why do you want to touch my hair?
Right.
Like that, I'll be curious to ask the person who wants to touch, why do you want to touch?
Right.
Or can you touch my hair? Or will you touch my hair? And I think, sometimes it's because I'm a writer, and anybody else chime in if you've ever written anything, you're constantly scrutinizing and editing what it is you're working on so that what it is you want to say is absolutely transparently clear. And so I feel like, when you say that you're educating, but educators weren't a part of the planning, you know, or social justice artists weren't a part of the planning, I think then you know, you kind of have to expect that there'll be some bumping of the heads where the communicated message is concerned.
Sure.
You know, so there's no question that your intention is a pure one. I read your article. I think that, again, it comes down for me to what is being disseminated into the ether universe, so to speak.
Right.
And I think that those images were kind of might have been counterproductive to your very pure intention, you know?
Sure, perhaps, and maybe in time we'll see that, and maybe in time we'll see the opposite. I think as standalone, I don't know why my camera's not working, but I'll just keep on talking. So I definitely agree with you in terms of the images as standalone. Like they don't necessarily say everything that I might be trying to say. But my intention was to, because I already know that sometimes when we as women, when we lower our heads and we get you know felt up in that way by someone that maybe that doesn't necessarily even care about us, it can make us feel like an animal in the zoo. We know that. I've had that conversation with a lot of my friends. I haven't necessarily had that conversation with people that are that have that curiosity, that people that are doing the soliciting. One of my intention, my goal with the whole, and especially the reason why this was called an exhibit, and it was executed in the way it was to illustrate that whole being put on display and being kind of felt up was sometimes how that question, even though it might seem innocent and harmless, that is it sometimes has the ability to make us feel as though we're animals in the zoo. So to me, my intention was to illustrate that might be the case on different occasions, but it was also to, especially since it was meant to be interactive, was also an opportunity to have a conversation. So I think for the people that may have attended the event, that might have come across, it might not have.
And Antonia, can I chime in real quick?
Yeah, sure.
As somebody who was there and kind of just trying to observe and listen, I heard a lot of people saying that both groups had the same message. And clearly, the obvious message is opposite, right? But they were perceptive of that the exhibit was giving that nuanced message where the women on display, that was coming across. And so I just want to say, as somebody who's in the crowd, that was something that I overheard.
Okay.
How do you disagree?
I'm not going to wholeheartedly agree with you there. I appreciate you putting that out there, and I agree with you that I did overhear conversations that support that idea. But I mean, when you say it's to educate, there's an image in particular. I think that it was a reporter from the Huffington Post who wasn't necessarily a part of the exhibit, but came down, and then there was a picture of her on Instagram where an older white woman was touching her hair, and she said something to the effect of like, "This feels weird." Mm-hmm. Do you think that woman who was touching her hair got the education and got the message that you intended? Because I think if she got the message and got the what you intended, she would not have touched that woman's hair and would have not have taken such revelry in doing so if she knew that it was about allowing the touchee to feel the aspect of being on display, or the level of disrespect in terms of invading my space. There were several people who I saw were engaged, in a very happy way. This is just some of the stuff that I witnessed, and then some of the images that I saw, where I don't feel the person was challenged to change their thinking about otherness. I feel like they were, it was about putting space between the exoticizer and the exotic. Like, oh, okay, you know what? This one day, I'm gonna give you a chance to touch my hair. Go ahead and touch it. Right. But I'd be curious to know you know, of the people, especially those who view the model's hair as other. I'd be curious to hear if they really walked away saying, wow, I just walked up and touched this person's hair and participated in making them feel like an object or something to be scrutinized and exoticized. I'd be curious to hear if that's what that woman's opinion was.
I'd like to jump in. As a model in the event, I'm just speaking on my firsthand experience of what I observed and what I felt from the experience. Now, people use the word educate, and in a way, I'll use that word too, because a lot of people that came up to me were African American women who were thinking of transitioning, who were transitioning, that wanted to know something as simple as, how do you do a 2-strand twist? I'm not comfortable wearing my hair as a wash and go. How do you do a 2-strand twist? Can you tell me that? To me letting them know how I do that, that's education. Now, not everyone that came to the event walks away understanding the message, but that's like any venue. A classroom, not every child sitting in the classroom walks away knowing the message that the teacher is trying to teach them in the front of the class. They don't. Not everyone understands that.
Well, if most of the children in the classroom don't get the message, that teacher should be fired.
Well,
Sorry.
I'm not saying most of them.
I mean, since you bring up the word,
I said not everyone. I said not everyone. But out of all of the people who showed up to the event, let's say there were 100 people that showed up. Only about 5 people touched my hair. Other people were just there for the conversation. They wanted to know things. They were curious. Not everyone touched my hair.
The intention, let me get this straight. The intention of the exhibit was to have this exchange between African American women about hair care and hair styling? Or was this exhibit about attacking the idea of black hair and black personage on a woman as other?
I'm not speaking on what Unruly.com had the exhibit be about. I'm talking about my experience of what the exhibit was about and questions that people asked me. That's why I prefaced it that way before I spoke. But I'm sorry?
Do you mind if I chime in?
Sure.
Please. Sorry.
So I think right now we're kind of honing in on this idea of education. So the intention, there's the intent and there's actually what happened. So the intention was to make this statement and then to also have a conversation. The goal, there's no way to predict exactly what the conversation was actually going to be about. I actually didn't anticipate so many, like having more black women there asking questions than non-blacks. So that's something that we had no control over, and that's something that happened, and I think that's something that we need to acknowledge, just in terms of having this entire dialogue. So that's one part of it. As far as education, though, and maybe, and I don't want you and I to dominate this conversation, so anyone else feel free to chime in. But as far as education goes, if this was, in fact, an opportunity to educate other people, non-blacks, about our hair, what you shake your head? Why? What's your concern?
I don't care to educate non-blacks about my hair.
It wasn't just non-blacks. It was
That's
everyone.
what I said. I said I don't care to educate anybody about my hair. If I have a curiosity about the world, it is my responsibility to learn about that particular thing. I'm not going to expect to go to China and for the people of China to go, oh, well, I'm going to take some time out of my day to explain to you how my culture works. Mm-hmm. No, I think that it is on the shoulders of the person with the curiosity to find a way to quench that thirst. I don't think it's the role of the if that's what you all wanted to do, and share that's absolutely fine. But I'm sorry, I just don't think it's my job or any person with other hair to educate a curious person about how their hair feels, moves, looks, falls, doesn't fall.
But what like you said, with them quenching their thirst, my thing is we were just an outlet there. We weren't going up to people saying, touch my hair, touch my hair. They were coming up. And so that was them initiating learning.
Right.
Can I say, as a non-black woman, I went there not out of curiosity to feel hair, but I went because I wanted to be a part of the conversation that was going on about women's experience when people want to touch their hair, because it's not an experience I had. And, you know, there weren't many white women there. You know, I think I saw one other one while I was there. But to me, the conversation, it was like an invitation to say, listen, this is my experience as a woman. It's different than yours. And I really loved that there was that reaching out for that conversation to happen, you know, and then now I can take that information, you know, and I wrote an article about it and kind of try to engage with white women and white feminists and say, we need to listen, you know, there was this great exhibit that reached out, you know, and there was this great conversation, and let's listen to this conversation. And I think that that fostering of deeper understanding is kind of one of the great things I think that came out of it.
Cool. The one thing that I do want to say about that is I agree with you in terms of, because I guess really what the larger issue here is that there is a cultural gap among other things that is present in America among the several different cultures that exist in America, and this curiosity is an indicator of that gap that still exists. And it's putting us all in this position of like having to be like the black hair ambassadors or the black ambassadors, especially when you work in an all-white office. So we have to like all represent our, like we're all like kind of, we have this responsibility thrust upon us. And it's not something that we necessarily want. Like sometimes we just want to go about our daily lives. So I get that. I think personally I've become a little bit emphatic or empathetic towards it, mainly because I just can remember moments in my life where I've just been totally clueless about certain subjects, and someone has done something that they didn't have to do and like just informed me about that. I'm here in France now, and God knows I probably ask a dumb question every day, and I've done my research. I've looked up on like, you know, French history. I've studied Napoleon and the Revolution, and now like looking into socialism because this country is a socialist country, and that's different and weird to me. So I probably asked some really, really stupid questions, but no one laughs at my face at those questions. They just, I mean, they may call me the dumb American, but they just answer those questions, and I'm a little bit smarter as a result of that. And so I guess maybe I'm here now in the position of othering because this country and these people are different to me. And so now that I've been put here, and just knowing the vulnerability of like not knowing stuff, it makes me more willing to pay that forward, to share whatever knowledge that I have. Especially when someone is coming from like a place of just like really just like not trying to offend or just trying to just like be better informed about a subject. So me personally, I don't mind educating another person. Some say curiosity is the first step to enlightenment. I will, of course, assess whether or not you are coming from that place of genuine curiosity or whether or not like you're just asking me a dumb question. But then I guess, but that's my choice. And you, Radha, you have the choice of whether or not you want to educate people or explain how, you know, you created the style that you're wearing now. I'm personally curious. I like to feature it on my site.
You can't touch it though.
So for me, I don't mind it, and on that day and with this exhibit, I didn't mind it. On certain days, I might not want to talk about my hair. I might not want to like explain how I put in a weave, or that I have on a wig today, or that like, you know, I washed and braided my hair and that's why it's spherical the way it is right now. Like I might not feel like having that conversation because like that's just not the mood that I'm in. So I think what you're honing in on is that just the need to have that choice, because sometimes that choice isn't ours. Sometimes like we're kind of backed into a hole and we're forced to kind of represent an entire race as one person, and no one person should have to do that.
I agree. I think it's really difficult for anybody to have to do that and then expect to have to educate anybody on an entire race or anything like that. I'm half black and half white, and so I get a lot of people, actually mostly African American women, that want to come up and touch my hair. But I do get a lot of white women asking to touch my hair. But both sides, they just kind of tell me, well, you don't have black hair, well, you don't have white hair. So I don't know what I have, but I mean, I think it all stands in the same place where you don't go up to somebody and with bad intention or no intention, just to touch them because you can. I think if you're really curious, if you're, then by all means ask me and I'll probably let you. It's just, I don't know. I think it would just be, it's a lot better to kind of educate someone than to just be like, you know what, no, don't touch my hair. And then they might never ask somebody again, and then their whole life, maybe they'll just be like, well, that's something they missed out on. They're still curious about it. And that could give them maybe, I don't know, curiosity leads to a lot of bad things. So I don't want people to like go up and just say, well, I'm curious to what it feels like, so I'm just going to touch them without permission. Whereas if they ask permission to a couple people and they say no, well, at some point, if curiosity takes over, they might just touch you anyway. So I don't know. I think educating them, or anybody who wants to know about it, I think that's a good idea to an extent. I mean, I don't think you should go around your whole life having to feel like you have to explain your hair to everyone. But I mean, if it's like a simple question, non-harming question, I would be more than happy to answer stuff like that. Does anybody else agree or disagree with that? I mean, I don't know.
I agree, because I think that we weren't seeking to educate the masses. We weren't seeking to educate every single white person out there. We were basically putting on a display. We were creating a forum for those that were in fact interested to come. It wasn't like a learning annex, class. There was a sign up to learn about Black Hair 101. It was a free forum. If in fact you do have curiosity, here's your chance. Here's an open forum. No judgment, no persecution. Come and ask whatever questions you have. Well, in this case, it was for 2 days only. So that was kind of the intent. We weren't trying to perpetuate or give people a free pass to come and just touch, Black women's hair. Obviously, that wasn't the ultimate goal. But I think that whoever was in fact interested, that was their opportunity to come and actually, touch and ask questions and things. I mean, we didn't even end up getting a lot of white people. We mostly, received a lot of Black women that had, curiosity as to what the heck we were doing in the middle of Union Square with these 4 girls holding signs. So that's my thing.
So Cleopatra, we lost you a little. We were just talking about the burden of educating non-Blacks about our hair, whether or not it's something that we should have to do, or whether or not it's something that is okay. Curious to hear your thoughts on it. Like, do you feel that, do you see it as a burden, or is it something that you welcome?
I see that it's not my burden to educate anyone about my history. I do agree with the other woman. I forgot her name.
Jen?
What was your name?
Was it me?
No.
I
can't find that yet. She got lost. She lost?
I'm here.
Oh, okay, because I don't see it on my screen. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, I just have a picture.
Oh yeah, I only see like a circle, but
yeah, that's me.
Yeah, I don't feel like it is an obligation. It's not my burden to teach someone else about my culture. If you really wanted to know, you Google it. I mean, on both sides, like there should have been a question mark on the side, like you can touch my hair. Like why would you want to touch my hair? And you can't touch my hair. Why is it bad that I can't touch your hair? It would have been good for the other side too. I wasn't there to hear what either side had to say. I've just been really following this like with a fine-tooth comb, and that's why I really wanted to hear what you guys had to say personally on what you intended to do. But on both sides, there should have been at least like when people came up and you saw these signs, why before they even did anything, before they even like touched your hair, should have posed the question why. I would have loved to know why anybody would want to get into anyone else's hair. And I know you said that a lot of non-Blacks people who weren't of color weren't there. But it's just also the whole exhibition too. It's not even about the hair part. It's more like it's kind of like a white oppression thing that goes behind the question. Like it's a little bit of oppression that's like, I'm going to go into your hair because I don't know anything about it. Since you're here, you're going to teach me about it. And I'm not here to teach anyone anything, you know? And I know that you didn't intend for any education to happen, but there should have been. And I know you didn't intend for it to look like what it did, but it did, you know? So it's almost like a little bit, it offended me, honestly, to tell you the truth. It did offend me. When I first saw it in the paper, I went and showed everybody about it because I was like, I can't believe these women are actually exposing themselves that much, you know? And it ended up being, I guess what it ended up being was, if I can understand, a Black 101 on hair for other women who are of color. Am I correct? Like, that's what it ended up being, like, about hair maintenance? But
yeah, it became like a natural hair clinic down there where people were swapping, like, oh, I use this product, or I do this, which I thought was beautiful, but I felt
totally
away from the initial intention or conversation piece, you know?
Yeah, and I love that your original intention was to open that conversation, because if anyone passing by was wondering why is this even an issue, they could go home and find out, oh, this is an issue, and what is it really like going behind? What is the underlying cause of everything that is really bothering people about touching everyone's hair? It didn't turn out that way, and I know that was the intention. Just a little bit more, like, I know, like, if you could do it again, I would have loved if you, like, maybe did handouts or something, or if it did turn into some sort of protest.
Yes.
What do you think about it?
No, I was just saying, like, you know, when I was down there, someone asked me, well, you know, if you could do this all over again, I wouldn't necessarily do it all over again, because it happened in the way that it was supposed to happen, so that we could have this deeper conversation, right? But I think that if someone is approaching this again, I mean, I think it's important to engage the people who do this and who really take the time to sculpt out the best way to express their intention. You know, there are all kinds of art or demonstration as art, or art as demonstration pieces that happen around the world. There was a piece about that where I believe it was staged in front of a national monument, and there was a Native American there, and next to the person it said, "Come and get your picture taken with a real live engine." You know, and the person, the Native person, was not smiling, and I think that for someone to record that, they now have an archive of this non-smiling Native American and their own image. They may never get the point of it, but that image being sent into the universe, they're seeing that the person modeling with or standing with the Native actor or performer is smiling and the other person is not, which to me makes a very clear statement.
Yeah, you're right.
About otherness and about exotification of otherness and oppressed people in this country. So I think, you know, just little tweaks, like the model's not smiling, them holding up signs that have questions on them. And then, as Cleopatra, you know, stated, having pamphlets available to people who have a real curiosity, not just about the texture of your hair, about their own desire to touch that hair.
Right.
You know, like, where's the social activists or the educators or the anthropologists who study this, who can, you know, provide the information so people can go home and look at themselves? Because I think I felt like that was maybe the intention, Antonia, and you correct me if I'm wrong, is for people to become aware of their own fascination with Black hair. Am I right?
Can I chime in and ask you a question? Would it have been different for you if we were holding up signs saying, "You can ask me about my hair"?
Yes.
Okay, so
It would have.
this then leads me to my next point. You and Cleopatra, I believe, were talking about a burden of educating people. So you don't think that that falls under the same umbrella?
Well, I guess it does fall under that umbrella. I'm just talking about, you know, if the intention was to use hair models to get people to think about uh, this exchange between the exotics, the exoticized, and the person who's doing, um, who's who sees this person as exotic, then there are ways I think that you can approach that that really gets the person thinking about, you know, if it was up to me, there wouldn't be an exhibit. If it was up to me, that's just me. You know, if it was up to me, it wouldn't be an exhibit. I feel like, as Cleopatra said, that's not on me to get you thinking about my hair. You know, now if I wanted to have a forum on black hair, I would invite my girlfriends and my girlfriends' girlfriends over, or to a place where we can have that conversation. But I know that this did not start out as a forum on black hair. It was about confronting the exotification of the black hair, which to me is an extension of the black body. So yeah,
Right.
maybe there should have been, you know, if you're saying it's about education, which I don't feel is my job to do, but if that was the intention, then maybe there should have been some pamphlets on Sarah Bartman and, you know, how black bodies have been objectified for centuries in this country. You know, if you're saying it's about education, but why is it our role to educate people about us? I don't see people in other communities doing this. I don't see people in the Hindi faith or people from you know, gypsy culture standing outside and saying, hey, come on and ask me about what it means to be a gypsy. You know, if you have that curiosity, it's on you. That's not my job, you know. But, you know, I feel like there's a silver lining in that we're having this conversation, you know, so that wasn't a bad thing. I just think, you know, what is it that you really want to say? What's the conversation you want to get at it? And who are you going to engage to help you do that? As effective as you
Something that I kind of want to touch on is I feel like it turned into a race thing. And that's something that I really did not like. I'm not speaking on your opinion or on the other side. I'm just saying in general, that's something that I don't like, because there was a Caucasian woman that came out and she was very curious about my hair, asking questions about my hair, and I was answering them. And at the end of the conversation, she ended up letting me know that she had a biracial child, and the biracial child had the same type of hair as me, and she didn't know how to deal with her daughter's hair. She tried to look up things, she tried every product, but she wanted to know what my experience was. How do I deal with my hair? Just being a woman of, I guess, another race, not knowing how to deal with a biracial child's hair.
Well, then, I think that is one of the silver linings that was to come out of this. But I know that was not the initial intention, was a clinic on how to do biracial hair. Now, the reason it became about race is because there was one kind of woman represented there. You know, you had, now I don't want to assume that you identify as black, but do you identify as black or African American?
Me?
Is it Jean? Jen? Not Jen.
No,
I
think Autumn.
identify, or which one?
Autumn.
Autumn?
The lady who was just speaking.
I identify with the human race. That's the race that I identify with.
Okay, well, on that day you weren't a human being. You weren't part of the human race. You were a black woman.
On that day, well, just because I was standing with a bunch of black women doesn't necessarily mean that I'm saying I'm black and I'm proud. Ask me questions about a black girl.
No, you have black textured hair, and that's
it wasn't like that, and that's why I don't like to generalize it and then generalize myself as.
Of course not, and that's why I asked you how you identify yourself. Yeah. You were a part of an exhibit about black hair, so. I think that it's awesome that mother got to have that exchange with you, but that wasn't, I don't think, the intention. The intention was to explore the fascination with black hair, and as a model, you were there to represent that. You know, if it's not about race, then have Latina sisters represented, have some Asian sisters represented. But to me, you know, it felt like it was about black hair specifically.
Definitely, it was definitely the larger conversation was definitely about race. If anything, it was more about race than it was about hair, in my opinion. You know, I think it was a race relations conversation, like my sister said, in the guise of a conversation about hair, ultimately. Because I mean, like Rada said, if it wasn't about black hair specifically, we would have had all sorts of hair. We would have had Asian hair, we would have had Latina hair, and so forth. So definitely, I think that was the larger conversation that was had.
So Abigail, what were you expecting people to grab from the event when they left?
We didn't have a clear-cut, you know, conclusion, you know, to what this event was going to be. We wanted to start a dialogue. We didn't know what form that was going to take. You know, we didn't know that was going to elicit all of this response. I honestly, from a PR standpoint, I honestly just thought we would get one little write-up in like the local paper, and somebody might show up, they won't show up. We really didn't know it was going to turn into this big thing. We didn't have a clear-cut answer or a clear-cut goal in terms of how it was going to turn out. We wanted just to start a dialogue. And Antonio, you can speak more to that. So I know it's your idea with your
yeah. So I mean, again, I think the intent was the two things that I said earlier. So again, it was making that statement because I've been put in that position where I've been made to feel aware of my race, aware of what makes me different from someone else. And I wanted to communicate that to other people. But then at the same time, I was like, well, if we're going to make such a big statement, let's use this as an opportunity to have a bigger dialogue. Because I know that like black hair is unique, especially in America. Like if we were in Africa, it wouldn't be so unique. It wouldn't be, you know, this spectacle, this curiosity. But in America, it is unique. And in America, there is a lot of politics and history tied to it. There's a lot of weight that we're carrying on our heads because of the type of hair that we have. So I wanted for this one moment to put aside that weight and just openly talk about it. I mean, to Rada's point, like there was no sort of anthropologist there or academic to ground this in like the larger historic significance. But I think my expectations was for the models not to talk about that, but to talk about their individual experience, because you can't talk about, it's hard to talk about the larger, because I think for me to have the expectation that you would be able to talk about, you know, such a huge topic extensively and do it justice, that would be an unrealistic expectation. But you can talk about your experience as a black or biracial or just curly-haired woman and what that means, and that those are the types of conversations that I'm happening when I do choose to indulge someone. And I know that when I do choose to indulge someone and when I choose to indulge the right person, I usually feel pretty good afterwards. And usually you feel like, oh, there are those conversations that you have when you feel like, oh wait, shit, that was really good. Like I'm coming out better than I was before I had this conversation. You know, the other person has too. So as I was, my goal was to replicate that feeling, was to replicate that sort of like, let me just like put aside like my angst about this or my my unwillingness to talk about the hair, and let's just like do it. Let's have a conversation. Let's see if we can have or replicate that like sort of like kumbaya moment where we all kind of like, oh, okay, I get you and you get me. And now we're both a little bit better for it. So maybe it was too like idealistic to think that could happen on a large scale or even like a medium-sized scale, but that was the intent and that was the goal.
But we have to also understand that, you know, this legacy of chattel slavery in this country, while it may have ended, you know, some centuries ago, the chains are still there. And when I say chains, I'm not just talking about enslaved people. I'm talking about the ancestors, I'm sorry, I'm losing my thought. The children of the people who did the enslaving. Like this country is still, blacks, whites, Latino, we're still dealing with, we're still a racialized nation. And I feel like the legacy of slavery has led so much to that energy. And while I think that your intention was and is a great I mean, we're having this dialogue. We just have to remember, like, what preceded us,
Right.
and about the Sarah Bartmans and the many of us who were put on display and sold in this country, and the trickle down effect of this, the legacy of slavery in this country and how it impacts us today around complexion, around body image, around aesthetics, around space, around ownership. It's still very alive today. You know, it's very, very prevalent, you know?
I feel like this exhibit really brought those things to the surface, and you know, I think that the interactive part of the exhibit is still happening, and that the art is still kind of taking shape, and this conversation is shaping it, and other dialogues online have been shaping it as well. You know, so I think that that's what all the things that you're saying, Radha, I think you're kind of creating that art too, right? And starting that dialogue, in which I think is so necessary.
But I think it would be naive for me to think that us having this dialogue is going to chip away at people's mindsets.
Well,
some people don't even realize. Some people, it may chip away at some people's mindsets, but we're talking about a conditioning that has happened to people in this country, and the conditioning being spread through generations of people. And we need to continue to do the work. Right. We need to continue to do the work, but we have to be strategic about it. We have to be armed, because it may sound dramatic, but we are at war here. We have a documentary out. There's a documentary coming out called Dark Girls, where women, adult, successful Black women, are talking about feeling undervalued in this country, undervalued in their own community and in their own family. You know, so it is a huge beast that we're trying to chip at, and it's not going to take one exhibit. It's not going to take one conversation. And I think that, Antonia, your willingness to share one-on-one with someone and share that information is awesome, and I think it reflects highly on you. Now, whether or not that person goes away and doesn't ask the next person, can I touch your hair? You know, like, it's left to be seen. So I think it's about, like, being really strategic about what it is we want to say, what is the impact that we want to have. Yes, it's an art piece, but as a person who does social justice art, when I say I obsess over how my message is going to get across. Sometimes I'm up all night thinking about that. And so, you know, I don't think it hurts to really put the work in, so that if the intention is to educate, then we've got the information. If the intention is to titillate, if the intention is to expose, if the intention is to stimulate, I mean, they're just so many different possible outcomes. But I think when an artist or a person who has something to say is really conscious of what it is they want to say and whom they want to speak to.
I do agree with you on one of the points that you made, as far as when you're trying to get a message across, that it can be misinterpreted. And I feel like, from my experience standing up there, there was an African American woman in the crowd, and she had a Caesar. And she was like, you guys are standing up there, and I don't see anybody that looks like me. I don't see anybody that has hair like me. And my thing is, I wasn't up there to represent everyone. I was up there to represent myself. I'm not speaking on anyone else's burden or whatever it is that they've experienced in their life. I was there to speak about mine.
Well, welcome to the great Black monolith. This is what happens, unfortunately. And I think it was brave of you to do that. I couldn't do it personally, because I might have some kind of like knee-jerk reaction, just punch somebody. I couldn't do it. So you brave, girl. Hats off and brave off to you. But I do think that it's, again, intention,
right.
preparation, strategy, because it does go into the hemisphere. And I actually think that you're bringing up the example of being a teacher in a room and making sure that the majority, I mean, it's your job as a teacher, not necessarily the ladies of Unruly.com, but it is your job as an educator for the majority of that group to walk away with your intended lesson. And if that doesn't happen, what does the Donald say? You're fired. You know, so it's like we're great because these sisters have this site going and this conversation going. I just think that, unfortunately, as African Americans, Blacks, people of color, again, whatever we're being called this week, we get lumped into this one monolithic voice, you know, and we, you know, as an artist, I struggle with that all the time. I want to be free. I want to say what it is I want to say, but I also understand that I have an opportunity and a platform to speak to a Black experience, a Black experience.
Right.
So, you know.
So we're a little over our time, so I'm going to try and do my very best to kind of sum up the conversation and also to just kind of leave some parting words. So I think a lot of really good points were brought up. I think some of the things that I've taken away is that and this is from this discussion as well as just the exhibit. In general, there's power in imagery. A picture is indeed worth 1,000 words. And as you have repeated over and over again, Rod, it's really important that we choose our words and our imagery wisely. I think whether or not, we also kind of discussed whether or not, or the effectiveness of the exhibit. It's hard to measure how many people, you know, walked away from that exhibit and felt like, you know, their perspectives or their preconceived notions were challenged, or maybe they just they copped a feel and called it a day. It's hard to measure that. I will say this though, that amongst you know the tweeting and the comments about the offense that this exhibit was to some, there were comments like, "Oh, I didn't know this was an issue. I'm now more aware of this, and I'm now going to be more sensitive." I've had people email me saying, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry if I've ever done this to you." So I have seen like a little bit of a trickling in of people that are literally saying that they weren't aware of this offense or non-offense for some. And the more people talk about it, because I've seen people on, I think this topic got picked up on The Guardian, which is, I assume is predominantly a white audience, and they're talking about it. More people are learning about the things that we as women or Black women are just talking about, because for me, I was just talking about this like in my home with my best friend, and that was it. And now a few more people know about it. And even if those few people are just a drop in the bucket, that's one drop closer or further away from where we started. And so I personally can't discount that. I know, especially because I quit my job and decided to do this and assume the risk of moving to another country and not having a steady income. I know that every little step matters. So even if the task of battling or going to war and fighting this whole sort of the disparity between the different races in America, that's a huge task, and there's no way, of course, any one person can take that on its own. Even though it might be a David and Goliath story, there is a chance that a few encounters or a few moments or a few conversations, they can make a difference, or they can enlighten a few people who may in turn enlighten a few more people. So I think what I would like to do, just because I'm a person of action and I don't, once I'm started, I don't stop. I'm definitely going to think more about the message that's put out there, especially if there is this platform that I'm trying to utilize to get a message across. There are people that have said that this exhibit needs to come to their town because the conversation needs to be had in their town. I think if this exhibit or any kind or an iteration or variation of the exhibit were to happen again, it definitely would be refined, and it would be refined in a way that takes into account a lot of the feedback that we've gotten.